Chapter 46, The Terror of the Abyss. The abyss did not take long to answer. The group advanced in a loose formation, descending an uneven slope of damp stone. The elven crystals cast a pale, whitish light that did not so much illuminate as tear fragments of shape from the darkness, leaving the rest in uneasy half-shadow. There were no clear walls, no visible ceiling, only an immense void of stone that seemed to close and open at once. Each step echoed more than it should have. Luthera was the first to stop. She did not growl. She did not bristle. She simply lowered her body, rigid, ears drawn tight, amber eyes fixed on a high ledge to the left, where the light barely grazed a twisted stone formation. Sarah followed her gaze at once. "Halt!" she ordered. The group stopped without question. Cal shifted his left foot forward, the small shield snug on his arm, his sword already bare in his other hand. Doran set the weight of Grumar's axe against the ground, ready to lift it in a single motion. Alden widened his stance and felt the familiar balance of steel. Myranthel in his right hand, the short sword with the wolf-headed hilt, his father's legacy, in the other. Lyanna closed her eyes for an instant, focusing. The first Krogar dropped from above. Sarah had already loosed an arrow. It whistled and struck the creature in the chest before it touched the ground, knocking it into the rock with a wet impact. There was no pause, and two more descended from a higher outcrop, hurling themselves down with sharp, shrieking cries. Sarah released a second arrow that drove through the neck of one, and a third that hit the other in the shoulder, sending it rolling across the ground with a warped scream. "Now!" she shouted, already stowing the bow. Krogar surged from cracks in shadow, crouched low, claws extended, yellow eyes bright with vicious intelligence. The fight closed in at once. Kel moved first, shield and sword working together. He caught the slash on his shield and, in the same turn, drove his blade into the creature's side. The Krogar fell backward, convulsing. Another launched low to the ground. Kyle took half a step back, lowered his center, and cut down. Steel met flesh and bone with a dry sound. Doran came in on his right. Grumar's axe carved a brutal arc, splitting a Krogar from shoulder to chest. The impact rang like a hammer strike in a sealed forge. It was not elegant. It was devastating. Sarah moved like a sharpened shadow. Her blades delivered short, precise cuts. Wrist, throat, tendon. Nothing was wasted. Dren stayed at the edge of the clash, where the shadows were thickest and the chaos less visible. His daggers appeared and vanished, always out of rhythm. He did not meet an attack head-on. He punished the mistake. One fell as it tried to reach Sarah from behind. Another lost its leg as it lunged for Lyanna, and Dren finished it without slowing, already turning toward the next. Each movement was economical, almost careless. Wherever the group faltered for a heartbeat, Dren was there, closing the gap, covering the withdrawal, ensuring no one was left alone. He did not shout. He did not give orders. He simply kept the others' backs alive. Alden surged forward when a Krogar tried to flank them. Arundel moved with fluid precision, turning a claw aside, while the wolf-hilt short sword found the creature's belly. Alden rolled both wrists almost at the same time, freeing the blades before the body fell. There was no fury in his movements, only control. Then Luthera entered. The wolf slipped between legs in shadow with a deep growl, leapt and knocked down a Krogar that was springing toward Lyanna. Her fangs closed on its throat, and she shook it violently before releasing it and turning toward the next threat. Lyanna raised her hand. She did not summon a storm. She did not need to. A blast of compressed wind burst before her and swept two Krogars coming in from the side, hurling them into a rock wall with force enough to leave them disoriented. She seized the instant and advanced, sword in hand. The blade Alden had forged for her moved with surprising ease. Lyanna sought not strength, but precision. She cut, retreated, then drove the wind again to make space. She did not lead the fight, but she held it. For a heartbeat, it seemed the initial rush was breaking. Then something heavy dropped from the ceiling. It was not fast, it was implacable. The Varog landed between Alden and Doran, throwing up a cloud of dust and shattered stone. Its body was massive, plated in irregular slabs, and its roar reverberated through the cavern like metal dragged across living rock. Alden reacted on instinct. Arundel caught the first swipe, turning it just enough that it did not tear through his torso. The second blow struck the breastplate full on and hurled him into the rock. The air left him. Everything turned white. Doran roared and brought the axe down with both hands. The weapon bit into the Varrog's side, wrenching a furious bellow from it. Sarah slid along its flank and drove one blade into a less protected seam at the neck. The creature thrashed, battering stone with violent force. Lyanna hurled another blast, this time straight at its face, forcing it back a step. Luthera seized the opening and bit into one of its legs, tearing a shriek of pain from it. Alden forced himself up in time to deliver the final strike. Arundel found the exposed neck, and the short sword followed the motion. The Varrog fell with a crash that made the ground tremble. Silence returned at once. Only ragged breathing remained and the late echo of battle. No one celebrated. Sarah was the first to move. She retrieved her bow, knelt beside the bodies, and began gathering her arrows one by one, wiping each with a cloth before returning it to her quiver. "They are not endless," she said quietly, more reminder than reproach. Alden braced a hand against the wall, catching his breath. The breastplate bore a dark mark where the blow had landed, and a dull pain ran along his side. It was not serious, but it was there, present. Doran shook dust from his shoulders and checked the axe's edge in silence. Cal sheathed his sword and adjusted the shield. He was unhurt, yet his breathing was heavy. Luthera did not go near the bodies. She paced in short circles, scenting the air, lifting her head toward the blackness stretching beyond the crystal's reach. Her tail moved slowly, tense. Alden noticed. "What is it?" he asked under his breath. Before anyone could answer, something sounded far off. It was not a scream, not a roar. It was a deep, dull odor, as though something heavy had slammed against stone with deliberate force. The sound traveled through the cavern and returned as a warped echo, making the ground tremble faintly beneath their feet. Then another odor. Closer. The group went still. Luthera gave a low, nearly imperceptible growl and stepped back until she stood beside Alden, never taking her eyes from the darkness. The abyss had stopped watching in silence, and something ahead had begun to listen. The camp stretched like a scar at the foot of the mountain. Night had fallen over Kharad-Dûm, and torches set into the rock drew an uneven ring of light around tents, carts, and banners. From there, the colossal gates were visible even in the dim. Immense, sealed, guarded by the stone giants that had returned to their ancient stillness, as though they had never moved at all. Riven was the first to look upon them. He watched from a nearby rise for a long time, brow furrowed. At his feet, the outer settlement lay in broken shadow, collapsed roofs, ripped doors, goods scattered. Improvised fires burned where a few survivors huddled in silence. Other bodies lay half-covered, lined up without ceremony. Then he lowered his gaze to his own camp. Wounded soldiers braced against one another. Some tended in haste, others already still. Discipline held order, but it could not conceal the price. 2 squadrons would not reform that night. Riven clenched his jaw and walked toward the main tent. Inside, the light of an oil lamp illuminated a map spread upon a low table. Ralim leaned over it, a cup in hand, as though studying an interesting move in a long game. "Was it necessary?" Riven asked without preamble. Ralim did not look up. "Which part?" he replied, calm by design. "Sacrificing 2 squadrons," Riven said. "We all knew the Guardians would respond. Sending them against the gates was useless." Ralim took a sip before he spoke. "No book," he said, "no tale, no dwarven warning can replace direct experience." At last he lifted his eyes. "And whether you believe it or not, I obtained valuable information." Riven stepped closer. "No information," he replied, "is worth the lives of 2 of my platoons, nor the lives of the innocents in the outer settlement." Ralim regarded him as though confirming something he had already suspected. "There it is," he said at last. "Your problem. Always." He straightened slowly. "Your moral superiority. That constant need to believe there is a proper way to wage war." He shook his head. "It prevents you from seeing clearly." Riven held his gaze unmoving. "You know better than anyone," Ralim continued, "that sometimes sacrifices must be made. You have done it before. You will do it again, no matter how you lie to yourself about it." He leaned slightly toward him. Perhaps you command the order of the crows, but this army is under my command, and I will decide which sacrifices are worth the price and which are not." A brief silence fell. Then Ralam smiled. It was not a broad smile. It was narrow, calculated, cruel. "Stop behaving like Master Thorian," he added. "You know better than anyone how that ended." Riven did not answer. His hands closed slowly into fists, knuckles whitening. For an instant, rage crossed his face unmasked, a crack in the iron discipline that held him. Then he turned. He left the tent without a word. Ralam watched him go, the smile still upon his lips. When the sound of footsteps vanished into the camp's murmur, he murmured to himself, barely audible even to him, "Coward." The word hung in the stale air of the tent, while outside, the gates of Kharad-Dûm remained shut, and the stone giants kept watch in silence. The abyss closed around them again. After the fight, their pace slowed, not only from physical fatigue, but from something harder to name. The air seemed thicker now, as though each step pushed against an invisible resistance. The elven crystals still shone with steady light, yet that clarity now felt insufficient, almost offensive against the vastness of shadow that stretched around them. They walked for long minutes without speaking. The echo of their steps returned with a strange delay. It was not a clean reflection. Sometimes it came doubled, other times too late, as though the cavern repeated sound with an intention of its own. Luthera moved a few steps ahead, but she no longer scented the ground. Her head stayed low, body taut, advancing with an unnatural caution even for her. A distant scraping broke the silence. It was not loud, not sudden. It was low, drawn out, stone against stone, with patient persistence. The group stopped at once. No one spoke. No one breathed more than necessary. The sound ceased. The stillness that followed was worse. Luthera froze. She lowered her body until it nearly brushed the ground and fixed her stare on the side darkness, where the light could not define shape. A barely audible growl vibrated in her throat. Then something struck, not from ahead, from the side. A brutal impact shook the nearby wall, and a cloud of dust and rock fragments burst into the air. The ground vibrated beneath their boots, and a sharp, damp, ancient smell hit their faces like the breath of something far too large. Alden barely caught a glimpse, an outline of black, an elongated mass withdrawing with impossible speed, leaving behind a dull echo. "Back!" Sira managed. The second Udar came almost at once. A dark form cut through the space between them in a curved, violent motion. The bony tail lashed stone with force enough to make the ground quiver. The sound rolled through the cavern like a deep drum. Lyanna turned just in time. The silhouette emerged where she had stood a heartbeat before. Cal did not think. He threw himself sideways on instinct. The bony whip struck his upper back, shoulder to ribs, with a dry odor followed by a cut that tore through cloth and flesh. Blood came at once. Cal clenched his teeth. He did not scream. The sound that escaped him was a choked, brief exhale. Enough. The thing reacted instantly. It turned toward him. Sarah fired. The arrow struck the dark mass with a sharp crack and rebounded, deflecting without visible effect. Doran swung the axe where he thought a body might be, but the blade met only stone, throwing sparks in a metallic crash that thundered through the cavern. Alden stepped in to cover them. Arundel intercepted another blow, but the force flung him back. The Durkan breastplate absorbed the impact, yet the collision with rock stole his breath. He dropped to one knee, the metal vibrating against his chest like a cursed bell. Silence held for a heartbeat. Then the thing moved again. It did not strike blindly. It shifted toward where the noise had been greatest. Alden understood then. "It does not see," he murmured. "It reacts to sound." As if it had heard him, the creature altered its angle. It paused when they all went still, then turned, searching for another vibration. It was learning. Dren was the first to raise his voice. "Do not face it," he said, urgency held tight. "Move!" The tail slammed the ground again. The impact shook the cavern, and the echo came back multiplied. The creature advanced toward the sound, not with haste but with terrible certainty. They ran, not a chaotic flight, but a desperate retreat. Each footfall announced them. Each breath sounded too loud. Lyanna turned once. She raised both hands and pushed with everything she had left. The compressed blast struck the creature head-on, deflecting it just enough to buy precious seconds. Her green eyes blazed with unnatural intensity, and when she lowered her arms, exhaustion hit her at once. She stumbled. Sierra caught her before she fell. "There!" Dren shouted. Through dust and shadow, he pointed to a narrow vertical fissure in the cavern wall, barely visible, too tight to allow more than one person at a time. "One by one," Sierra ordered. She pushed Lyanna through first, then Doran. Cal moved with help, pain wrenching an involuntary groan from him as blood soaked his clothes. Dren slipped in behind him. The tail struck again. Alden covered the rear. The dark whip scraped the breastplate, carving a deep groove into Durkan's steel. The sound of metal on bone was brutal, an iron scream that rang through the cavern. Luthera sprang through the fissure just before the shadow could reach her. Alden went last. Inside, the darkness was absolute and crushing. The fissure barely allowed movement. Breathing came short and uneven. Kyle pressed himself against the stone, pale, blood running down his side. Outside, something stopped at the entrance. A slow scraping ran along the rock. The creature did not attack. It remained there, listening. The whip struck the opening once, precise as though testing the stone's strength. Then only the sound of breathing remained, breathing that was not human, and the certainty that the abyss had not let them go.